Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I thought I'd do a quick live stream about something I'm working on for a presentation I'm giving tomorrow at the Illegal Dumping Conference in Oakland. This is a case study that I'm going to be talking about. I've prepared a couple slides. I think it's pretty compelling because it shows that this technology can have an impact. If used to report illegal dumping consistently on a daily basis, this technology has been shown through this case study to result in dramatically cleaner streets. So I'm just going to jump into it real quick because I actually got to go soon, but I just wanted to present this before I left. So I did a 2-month case study back in 2012 in my neighborhood where I flew within about a mile of my house, and which is actually a very big hotspot for illegal dumping in San Francisco. Probably the worst illegal dumping in San Francisco from what I've seen. My objective was to report every single illegal dump site every day and see what happens. And my theory was that the streets would get cleaner because DPW and Recology would come out more often to clean up the streets. So what I did is I used my software automation. I used a drone that I purchased and my own time to spend about an hour every day flying and then flying the drone, running my AI, and then reporting the dump sites that were detected to San Francisco's 311 department. That 311 department then would route the reports to DPW or Recology, depending on what kind of report it was, and they'd come out and clean it up. San Francisco has an SLA where they will come out within a specified amount of time for each different type of report. And for illegal dumping, which is like loose garbage and debris, that's going to be 48 hours. And for bagged garbage, it is 4 hours. So they actually come out pretty quickly. My conclusion in this report, I'll get into this more as I go through it really quick, but my conclusion was that frequent continuous reporting really changed the cleanliness of my neighborhood. So let's start at the beginning. On May 9th, I hadn't flown for a while. In fact, this was very early in my drone flight and using the trash drone at all. I had only flown 12 flights before this, officially reporting garbage, and those were spread out over a 3-month period. So on May 9th, or just before May 9th, I decided I was going to fly daily and see what happened. And on May 9th, I flew for the first flight in this experiment, and I found 118 dump sites in this region that you're seeing on the map. There's some pictures there below. You can see it's a pretty large amount of garbage. These aren't small dump sites like 1 or 2 garbage bags. Of course, some of them are, but there are also a large number of large garbage piles at these locations. So you can see how it's kind of distributed out over the neighborhood. There are some hot spots where there's more garbage than others. And I decided that I was going to fly continuously for about a month and see what happened. So I reported and flew every day for 26 days moving forward. And then during that time, I reported and kept track of all of the garbage I reported. I have photos, I have exact latitude, longitude, a bounding box that gives me the volume of the garbage. And in that time, I reported 444 different unique dump sites. On May 24th, 2022, which was 26 days later, I flew for the final flight for this first round of the experiment. And on that day, there were 7 dump sites. And so you can see that's a big difference from 118 to 7. So that was the first experiment. And in my mind, what that meant was that flying continuously cleaned up the neighborhood. But I wasn't done yet because obviously you're probably thinking this, well, that's just one experiment. You just did that once and maybe you got lucky. All right. So I took a 2-week break. The following day, I stopped flying. I took a break and I thought, well, I'm going to not fly for 2 weeks and see what happens. I knew that this was going to be a question. Like, what if it's just a coincidence? So I didn't fly for 2 weeks. And when I got back to flying on June 6th, I flew and I detected and reported 73 dump sites. in different locations, a little more spread out this time. And that's typical from what I've seen in flying over the past year. The garbage ends up everywhere. It's not just one location. Of course, there are areas that get a lot more dumping than others. And so here we go again. I'm going to, 78 dump sites. Let me fly it again and see what happened. So I, again, flew every day for 24 days, this time 2 days less, but 24 days. And at the end of 24 days, after reporting 410 dump sites all over my neighborhood, and you can see some examples here of those dump sites, big dump sites, lots of garbage. At the end of that, there were only 5 dump sites on that final day on June 29th. And so for a second time, I was able to confirm that reporting every day ends up with cleaner streets in my neighborhood. It's got to be continuous. And I want you to reflect on that and think about for a second, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Well, to me, what it means is that continuous reporting has a dramatic effect, and there's a reason why. And I have some knowledge just from having done this for a while, so I have insights that I can draw on. But if you were to draw on just that information alone, what would you think? Obviously, since I'm reporting every pile and they are getting cleaned up, then DPW cleans up the piles that are reported. That's the first conclusion I think you could draw. The second conclusion is, well, why aren't they cleaning it up when I'm not reporting? And I think the obvious deduction from that is that maybe dump sites aren't being reported. Maybe that's the simplest answer, I think. Another answer could be that maybe they're not cleaning up dump sites that other people report. And you would be like, well, why? Why would they do that? Well, maybe the locations aren't good, or maybe the descriptions aren't very good. Maybe the perspective of the photo isn't very good. I don't know. But it definitely makes me think and wonder. So I thought, well, could this be another fluke? So I went and looked at all the data that I collected, and I realized that it was steady improvement. This wasn't just like one day where there was less and I happened to stop on that day. No, this was steady improvement, so that each day I flew, the number of piles either stayed about the same or went down. And this is an illustrative graph that shows like the general trend from that first flight to the end. And it works this way. So like eventually, like the number of sites goes down to a very low number, about 5 to 10, and it stays there. And if on the second stint that I flew, the second 24 days, I didn't stop on that 24th day. I kept going for another month. And what I saw over the course of the next month was that the number of piles each day fluctuated between 0 and about 15 max. And so continually reporting kept that number down pretty low. It didn't ever stay at 0 because obviously there's a lot of dumping going on a day-to-day basis. The number of sites, that's the case study. I think it's interesting. I think it's indicative that we have a problem with reporting, not with cleaning up. It doesn't say anything about I'm not saying anything about like about enforcement or punishment. I'm just talking about cleanup. That's what I'm focused on. So yeah, there are probably other conclusions you can draw about like, well, why are people doing it in this first place? How do we stop people from doing it? But what I can see very clearly is that if there's garbage on the ground, we need to clean it up. And if we need to clean it up, we need to know where it is. And if we don't know where it is, we can't clean it up. But then also, because we know that DPW will clean it up if it's reported, why don't we just report it? Okay. So in my neighborhood, things obviously aren't getting reported as much as they should. And just to like give some context to what kind of illegal dumping we're talking about here, it's everything from furniture, construction and household debris, like a single bag of household garbage, or like an entire block of construction garbage, or like an accumulation of all kinds of different garbage in one spot. Sometimes even car tires or car parts, mattresses, you name it. It's all there. There were, like I said earlier, a few hot spots where there's more dumping than other spots. You can see them on this map where this is the entire 2-month period. And you can see that right in the middle, there's actually a hot spot with like a cluster of 38 and another cluster of like 35. And then there's a kind of a hot spot down to the left and below that. And then another hot spot to the right of that. And those are definitely areas where lots of dumping happens every day. And the garbage accumulates there. It's not just a single incident, it's multiple incidents. Now, throughout the neighborhood, there are definitely single incidents on almost every street corner, and it's sporadic. So one day you're going to get a bag of garbage on one corner, and the next day you're not, and then it'll be on some other corner. And so those are really hard to know to predict, but at least I haven't tried yet, and I haven't seen any patterns other than that it happens everywhere. But in terms of like the large scale repetitive dumping that accumulates, you can see where the hotspots are here. So then I took actions out of this, or there were actions taken out of this that resulted in cleaner streets. So reporting these dump sites every day to San Francisco's 311 resulted in DPW showing up and cleaning them all up. So all of these 888 piles got cleaned up. And then I worked with 311 throughout this process with their IT department to change and improve the way I was reporting so that it would help them to not be overwhelmed, but also get the information they needed. And those kinds of improvements were things like adding a really great description, cropping the photo to a certain size and certain viewing area. They need context, but they also need detail. And then also making sure that the latitude, longitude coordinates were very accurate. Lately, I've been working on that a bit more. I had a session where I got the accuracy of the dump sites down to within a foot of the actual location, and I verified that multiple times. So the accuracy of the dump sites now is incredibly high, and it leads the team right to the location. So that's great. Yeah, so why is this important? It's important because there is a solution. There is a way to solve at least the problem of having garbage on the streets. I'm not necessarily solving the enforcement or prevention problem, but I think this is a solution for abatement and cleanup. It's 1,600 times more efficient and 10 times as fast as patrolling in a pickup truck. And it results in 36 times cleaner neighborhood. That happened twice. It's also an equity benefit. There's an equity benefit to this in that in my neighborhood, it's a neighborhood that has equity issues and has traditionally had equity issues historically, where we don't get the same services that a lot of other neighborhoods get. And in this case, it may be because we're not reporting the problem as much, but then also the reporting is an equity issue because maybe people in my neighborhood, for whatever reason, aren't able to report as often as someone in another neighborhood that doesn't have as big of a dumping problem. Or maybe we get discouraged because there's so much dumping and every time we report, we don't really know what's happening. Whereas like I'm focused on this, I'm tracking it. I have a two-way 311 integration where I'm pulling down the statuses of the reports I've made and I can see it in a dashboard exactly what's happening. So I get a lot of information and I'm focusing on this problem. And then finally, this results in better government satisfaction because when people see the neighborhood being cleaned, they feel it being cleaned and they are happier. And I've anecdotally validated that by going out and talking to hundreds of people in my neighborhood after I've flown this experiment or this case study at the end of it, and talking to people at the beginning, talking to people at the end. The results were dramatically different. At the end, people were literally telling me like DPW is doing such a good job. They're out here cleaning before I even get here in the morning. I feel like they're always here and they're always on top of it. Whereas in the beginning, everybody I talked to wanted to sign up for my service. They really liked the idea and they thought that there was a huge problem. So the anecdotal evidence is in as well. Well, that's the end of my little cast. I got to go. I'm going to go over to Oakland to a social hour to meet and talk about this very topic with people from all over the state of California who are dedicated and focused to dealing with illegal dumping. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.